The New York morning had started like any other, with the city bustling to life. Delivery trucks rumbled down narrow streets, honking horns blending with the chatter of pedestrians. Amid the chaos, Brewer's Haven stood as an oasis of calm, known for its artisanal coffee and warm atmosphere. The cafe was a sanctuary for locals looking to escape the city's relentless pace. Inside, the cafe exuded charm. The walls were lined with shelves of books and potted plants, and sunlight streamed through the large bay windows, casting a golden glow on the polished wooden floors. The scent of freshly ground coffee beans mixed with the faint aroma of baked pastries wafting from the kitchen. Regulars filled their usual spots, some engrossed in their laptops, others chatting quietly over steaming mugs. At a corner table, a group of college students debated the latest tech innovations, oblivious to the storm about to enter their midst. Nearby, an elderly couple shared a crossword puzzle, their faces creased with the soft lines of decades spent together. Behind the counter, Lila, the cafe's lead waitress, prepared for another busy morning. Her auburn hair was pulled into a hasty bun, and her apron was slightly rumpled, a proof to the rush she had faced since dawn. She wiped down the counter with quick, practiced movements, glancing occasionally at the door, ready for the next wave of customers. The bell above the door jingled softly, a sound so familiar it barely registered with most patrons. But when Elon Musk walked in, heads turned. Dressed casually in a black turtleneck and jeans, his confident stride and easy grin made him immediately recognizable. He scanned the room briefly before stepping aside to let his companion enter. Donald Trump followed, his larger-than-life presence impossible to ignore. Dressed in a crisp blue suit with his signature red tie, he carried himself with the practiced air of someone used to commanding attention. His golden hair, perfectly coiffed, gleamed under the cafe's warm lights. Conversations faltered. A college student dropped his pen, and the elderly couple exchanged wide-eyed glances. Even Lila froze mid-wipe, her eyes narrowing as she took in the two men. "Nice little place," Trump remarked, his voice carrying through the room, as if he were addressing a crowd of thousands. "Very quaint. Not my usual style, but I can appreciate it." Elon smirked, glancing at him. "Not everything needs to be gilded in gold, Donald. I prefer the finer things in life," Trump said with a shrug. "But I suppose even I can slum it for one morning." The comment drew a few chuckles from the braver patrons, though most remained silent, their gazes darting between the two men. Lila, still gripping her cleaning cloth, watched them approach the counter. Her heart raced, not from excitement but from a simmering anger she couldn't quite place. She wasn't the type to get starstruck, and the sight of two of the world's most powerful men did nothing to impress her. Elon reached the counter first, flashing her a polite smile. "Good morning." "Morning," Lila replied, her tone neutral as she grabbed her notepad. "What can I get for you?" "I'll have a latte," Elon said, "with oat milk, please." Lila scribbled the order down, her eyes briefly flicking to Trump, who was examining the pastries in the display case with exaggerated interest. "And for you?" she asked, her tone tightening. Trump straightened, his expression serious. "I'll take the largest coffee you have, black, strong, no cream, no sugar, just like my leadership." Lila's brow twitched, but she said nothing, jotting down his order. "Anything else?" "Is this all organic?" Trump asked, gesturing to the pastries. Lila stared at him. "I wouldn't know. I'm just the waitress." Elon raised an eyebrow at her tone but said nothing. Trump, however, chuckled. "Fair enough. I'll take one of those scones then. Looks hearty." As she turned to prepare their orders, Lila muttered under her breath, "Figures." "What was that?" Trump asked, his voice sharp. Lila turned back, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I said, figures." Trump frowned. "Figures what?" "You come in here acting all high and mighty, like this cafe isn't good enough for you. You think it's funny, don't you?" The room grew silent, every eye now fixed on the counter. Elon sighed, sensing the tension rising. Lila crossed her arms, her frustration now boiling over. "Do you even know what it's like to work a real job? To live paycheck to paycheck, wondering if you'll be able to pay rent next month? While you're out building rockets or tweeting about policies, people like me are just trying to survive." Trump looked taken aback. his mouth opening and closing as if searching for a retort. Elon placed a hand on his shoulder, signaling him to hold back. "Lila, is it?" Elon asked, his tone calm. She nodded, her jaw tight. "I can't speak for Donald," Elon said, "but I grew up in South Africa. My family wasn't wealthy. I've had to work my way up just like anyone else." "Work your way up?" Lila scoffed. "With billions of dollars, sure." Elon smiled, unruffled by her sarcasm. "Believe it or not, I didn't start with billions. I've slept on couches. I've worked late nights. Yes, I've been fortunate, but that doesn't mean I've forgotten what hard work looks like." Trump cleared his throat. "And I'll have you know, young lady, that I've employed thousands of people. I've built entire cities, practically. You think I don't know what hard work is?" "Do you?" Lila shot back. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like all you've done is profit off everyone else's labor." The cafe fell into an even deeper silence. Patrons held their breaths, waiting to see how the two men would respond. Elon took a small step forward, his tone calm but firm. "Lila, it's clear you've been through a lot, and I understand where your frustration is coming from. The world isn't always fair, and people like us can seem distant from the struggles of everyday life. But we're here right now in this cafe talking to you. That counts for something, doesn't it?" Lila blinked, her defensive stance wavering slightly. I guess. Trump, however, wasn't one to back down. "Look, I've been around long enough to know that no matter what I do, some people will always think I'm the villain. But let me tell you something. You're looking at a man who's been bankrupt and fought his way back. I've had to claw my way to the top, and you think I don't understand hard work?" Lila hesitated, unsure of how to respond. The tension in the room was palpable, but there was also a spark of curiosity. The patrons leaned in, eager to see where this would go. Elon raised a hand, his voice softening. "Donald, maybe this isn't about proving who worked harder. Lila has a valid point. Sometimes it feels like people in power are disconnected from the realities of those on the ground." Trump crossed his arms, but nodded grudgingly. "Fine, but that doesn't mean we don't care." Elon turned to Lila. "What would you like us to understand? If you could tell us one thing about your life, about what it's like to be in your shoes, what would it be?" Lila stared at him, caught off guard by the sincerity of his question. Her gaze flicked between Elon and Trump before she finally spoke. "It's not just about me. It's about people like me. We work long hours for little pay. We get told to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But no one wants to admit that the system is rigged against us." She took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. "And then people like you, people with money and power, you make decisions that affect our lives without even knowing what it's like to struggle." Trump sighed, shaking his head. "You think I don't know struggle? Let me tell you something. I've been called every name in the book. I've been sued, mocked, and ridiculed. You think that's easy?" Lila frowned. "But you had money to fall back on. People like me don't." Trump leaned on the counter, lowering his voice. "You're right. I've had advantages most people don't. But do you think that means I've never felt pressure, never had to make impossible choices? I've had thousands of people depending on me. That's a different kind of weight, but it's real." Elon stepped in, his voice thoughtful. "Lila, we're not here to defend every decision we've ever made. We've made mistakes, but we're also trying, each in our own way, to create opportunities, to push boundaries, to make things better." He gestured to the cafe. "Look around. These people aren't strangers anymore. They're part of this conversation because you were brave enough to speak your mind. That's how change starts, with conversations like this." Lila looked around, noticing the way the patrons were nodding, murmuring among themselves. The tension had shifted, replaced by something softer, something hopeful. Trump straightened up, a mischievous glint returning to his eye. "You know what? Let's put our money where our mouths are. How about I buy coffee for everyone here, on me?" The cafe erupted into applause and laughter. Lila blinked in surprise, her tough exterior cracking slightly. "You don't have to do that." Trump grinned. "I don't have to do anything, but I want to. Consider it my way of saying thank you for reminding us what really matters." As the baristas scrambled to fulfill the orders, the cafe came alive with chatter. Strangers struck up conversations. sharing their own stories of struggle and resilience. Elon and Trump sat at a small table, their coffee cups steaming in front of them, as Lila cautiously approached. "I'm sorry if I was rude," she said, her voice quiet. It's hard sometimes. Feeling invisible." Trump waved a hand. "Apology accepted. But you're not invisible, Lila. Not today." Elon nodded. "And maybe we can do more. You've given us a lot to think about." By the time Elon and Trump left the cafe, the atmosphere had transformed. What had started as a quiet morning, punctuated by tension, had become a shared experience of connection and understanding. Lila watched them go, a small smile tugging at her lips. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. As Elon and Trump stepped out of the cafe, the bell above the door jingled softly, signaling their departure. The crisp New York air greeted them as they stood on the sidewalk, their breath visible in the cool morning. "That went better than I expected," Elon said, a faint smile playing on his lips. Trump nodded, adjusting his tie. "Not bad for a morning coffee. But I'll admit, I didn't expect to get grilled by a waitress." Elon chuckled. Lila wasn't just a waitress today. She was a voice for a lot of people who feel overlooked. That conversation was bigger than the two of us. Trump tilted his head, considering the words. "You might be right. Not that I'll ever admit it publicly." Back inside, the patrons were buzzing with conversation. The earlier tension had given way to a sense of camaraderie. Strangers who had merely shared space before were now engaged in deep discussions, their voices overlapping in a pleasant hum. Lila stood behind the counter, her hands still clutching the rag she'd been using earlier. Her co-worker, a younger barista named Jenna, approached her with wide eyes. "Lila, I can't believe you said all that," Jenna exclaimed. To them, the two shared a rare moment of laughter, their camaraderie surprising even themselves. Back inside, the patrons were buzzing with conversation. The earlier tension had given way to a sense of camaraderie. Strangers who had merely shared space before were now engaged in deep discussions, their voices overlapping in a pleasant hum. Lila stood behind the counter, her hands still clutching the rag she'd been using earlier. Her co-worker, a younger barista named Jenna, approached her with wide eyes. "Lila, I can't believe you said all that," Jenna exclaimed. "To them!" Lila sighed, her shoulders relaxing for the first time that morning. "I don't know what came over me. I was just so frustrated." Jenna shook her head in disbelief. "Yeah, but the way they handled it? That was unexpected." Lila nodded, her thoughts drifting. For all her anger and assumptions, Elon and Trump had responded with a mix of humility and honesty. That had caught her off guard. She replayed their words in her mind, realizing that the exchange had sparked something in her, a flicker of hope that perhaps change wasn't as far away as it seemed. By the afternoon, news of the cafe encounter began to spread. A patron had captured parts of the conversation on their phone and uploaded it to social media, where it quickly went viral. The video showed Lila confronting the two men, followed by their thoughtful and unexpected responses. Comments flooded in. "This is the kind of leadership we need, real conversations, not just sound bites." Props to Lila for speaking her mind. And props to Elon and Trump for actually listening. "I didn't expect this level of humility from either of them. Respect." News outlets picked up the story. And soon headlines like, "Trump and Musk handle heated cafe. Confrontation with grace," began circulating. Talk shows debated the event, and hashtags like Chan Coffee with Leaders and Shalila Speaks began trending. The next morning, Brewers Haven was busier than it had ever been. People lined up out the door, hoping to catch a glimpse of Lila or simply experience the cafe that had become an overnight sensation. Reporters hovered outside, eager for a quote or a soundbite. Lila, overwhelmed by the sudden attention, did her best to stay focused on her job. But the outpouring of support was impossible to ignore. Customers left generous tips, wrote encouraging notes on napkins, and even brought flowers to thank her for her courage. One customer, an older man in a tweed jacket, approached the counter with a kind smile. "You did something brave yesterday," he said. "You reminded us all that leaders are people too, and that we have the power to hold them accountable." Lila blinked back tears, nodding. "Thank you. I didn't expect any of this." Meanwhile, Elon and Trump found themselves fielding questions about the cafe incident in their respective spheres. During a press conference, Trump was asked about the confrontation. His response was uncharacteristically measured. "Look, I've faced criticism my whole life. What happened at that cafe wasn't about tearing me down, it was about real concerns from real people. And if I can't listen to that, what kind of leader am I?" Elon, in a podcast interview, reflected on the encounter. "Lila reminded us that even with all our technology and progress, we can't lose sight of the human element. People want to be heard and they deserve to be. That's something I'll carry with me." The cafe encounter sparked a broader conversation across the country. Town halls began hosting more open forums, inviting citizens to voice their concerns directly to leaders. Social media campaigns encouraged people to engage in respectful dialogue, using the hashtag Speak and Listen. For Lila, the experience became a turning point. She started volunteering at local community centers, helping to organize events where people could share their stories and connect with local officials. Her voice, once hesitant, grew stronger with each passing day. Several weeks later, Elon and Trump returned to Brewers Haven, this time together. The cafe was quieter now, the initial media frenzy having died down. When they walked in, the familiar jingle of the doorbell made Lila look up from the counter. Her eyes widened in surprise. "You're back," Trump grinned. "Missed us?" Elon chuckled. "We wanted to see how you were doing." Lila smiled, a genuine warmth in her expression. "Better than I ever thought possible." "Thanks to you too." They ordered their coffee, black for Trump, a latte for Elon, and sat at a corner table. This time Lila joined them, and the three talked for hours about everything from policy to personal growth. By the time they left, the sun had set, casting a warm glow over the cafe. Lila watched them walk away, feeling a sense of closure and a sense of beginning. The cafe incident became more than a viral moment. It became a symbol of what was possible when people dared to speak and others dared to listen. For Trump, Elon, and Lila, it was a reminder that even in a divided world, common ground could still be found over something as simple as a cup of coffee. If you were inspired by this story, do well to share this story out to someone who might be going through some challenges and needs inspiration. Kindly join our community by hitting the subscribe button for more inspiring and uplifting stories. God bless you.